this is that was the story of a 12-year-old girl by the name of Christine or something like that. So anyways, she was a 12-year-old girl. Her parents in Berlin, living in Berlin, and actually she was born somewhere else, but her mom with her moved to Berlin. And I mean, anyone been to Berlin before? No. You have. Was it cold? Was it dark? Was it?
It was very nice, very clean.
Really? I guess every time I went it was kind of depressing looking city. And then I read this book as a teenager, so I always thought of this city as a very depressing city. Anyways, so they moved to Berlin, and 12-year-old, especially girls enter puberty more sooner than boys. And actually, when you enter teenage, your senses start to develop. Your mind becomes different. Your intellect becomes different. Your senses start to experience things they have not been experiencing before, and you want to learn new things about the world. The world seems so promising. It seems like there's a whole world is just waiting for you to go out there and conquer it, explore it, turn it upside down, inside out, everything other way around. So she was like that too, and started going out. Met. This was all happening in the early and mid 70s, 1970s, and she met new friends. Used to go out to this music place where kids used to hang out, and met a boy. And she was actually can even now if you look her up, she's still alive. Quite a beautiful person, very gentle skin, beautiful symmetric facial features. Her whole body seems to be an embodiment of symmetry, because usually most of bodies are sort of disproportionate, like some parts of the body are too big, some are too small, some are too wide or too opposite. But her whole body is like that, very symmetric. And you can look. I remember when reading this book as a teenage boy, looking at these pictures. She was at the age between 12 and 15, very pretty girl. And she meets this pretty boy, and you think, and when you're reading this, you're thinking, oh, this is so romantic, so nice. And then she gets to know more about this guy, and his company. And first time, they smoke a joint, then later on they take some acid, and then there are rumors going around about heroin, and they all have an attitude. They all have attitude. Oh, heroin, my God, stay away from that. If you have any brain left, stay away from it. And she's also thinking like that. But then one day she sees her boyfriend, kind of eyes half closed, and just looks like in samadhi, half samadhi, looks like half realized, self-realized, looks very content and kind of just enjoying himself. So she could understand that he actually took heroin. And anyways, little by little, she takes a shot too. Actually, first time she says, no, I'll just sniff it, I'll take it through my nostril. I'm not going to shoot this into my veins. And then, this is a sad story, by the way. Just if you're depressed, you don't want to get depressed, quickly leave. No, just kidding. But her life story, it's quite depressing, but it's very, very instructive. So it actually, it's a very positive, it has a very positive outcome, because she's still alive. And then after some time, they start shooting this heroin. And then before you know, they're hooked, and they're thinking, okay, gee, our lives are getting miserable here. Previously her mom would give her money, now her mom doesn't give any more money, because her mom's noticing weird things, she's not coming home for days, when she comes, she's a total mess, doesn't want to give her any money. Now they have to steal, so they steal. And, stealing money is not all that easy. Usually people don't let you steal their money. They put up some resistance. So life goes on, and so they decide we got to get off this drug. I mean, this is terrible. Our lives are becoming miserable. And actually, her mom one day finds her collapsed in the bathroom. She's lying in the bathroom, collapsed. I mean, 12, maybe at that time she was 13. Can you imagine mom looking at this tender-looking creature? I mean, I remember as a teenage boy looking at the face of this girl and feeling tenderness. Such a tender living entity, human being. Lying crashed on the floor. Looking like hell. And for a mom to see something like that, nasty. And anyways, they decide we gotta get off this thing. So they lock themselves in a room. I had few friends who were unfortunately heroin addicts, and I saw them go through crisis. I don't know. I mean, it hurts you looking at them. I can just imagine how much it hurts them, physically, mentally, emotionally. They're ready to do anything to get another shot. And so, anyways, they lock themselves in. They're vomiting and passing stool everywhere, and it's hell. But somehow or other, after some time, they get off this drug, and then they feel great. They feel successful. But what happens afterwards is you have this emotional emptiness. You feel like, because the experience of drug experience is very intense. Like it's so intense, you don't care about anything in the world. You just sit and veggie somewhere, and you're content. And they go back and meet their friends at this railway station, zoo, and it's zoo, whatever the German pronunciation is, ZLO, zoo. We used to say zoo, because that's where the heroin, where the junkies, especially the kids, used to hang out. And they would steal their trade things, sell, buy their heroin, and they meet their friends and tell them, look, we're clean. And the friends also think, oh, this is cool, they're clean, we should all follow this suit. And the one says, gee, yeah, we'll do it tomorrow, because right now I still have this little bit of heroin, so, we'll shoot it up and it'll be all fine. And they feel, yeah, we conquered this, we're over it, now we know we can conquer it in the future, so we're not going to get hooked by just another shot, take another shot and goes back to the same hell, And progressively gets difficult to get money. She learns more things about her boyfriend. She finds out that her boyfriend is actually a prostitute, because, how do you get money, So he would sell his body, not to women, but to men, And imagine her, girls, imagine having a boyfriend like that, And then she flips out. He tells her, no, I just masturbate them, I don't let them use the holes of my body. And she somehow or other she gets over it, But then as the time goes on, it's difficult to get money, so she starts doing the same thing, And she says, no, I just masturbate them, I don't let them use my body in any other way, But, after some time, time comes when it's difficult to get money, and, inch by inch, she gives in more and more, and she becomes a full-fledged prostitute, against her own will, just a junkie, wants to do this. And all along, every day, they go all over the place, and the meeting place is always this railway station in West Berlin. And, every few days they would meet there, or sometimes several times a day. And when they would not see one of the kids there, these are all people, in their teens, And when they wouldn't see any of the kids, they wouldn't say anything, because they knew the guy or the girl probably died, And it's easy to die from heroin. First of all, you become addicted to it. You like that rush, first when you shoot it, But what it is, if you get a bit of a pure heroin, it just kills you, because it's too much. You just overdose, you OD, You overdose, you die. Or some idiot may sell you impure thing, or completely fake thing. You shoot that into your veins, hits the brain in a matter of seconds, you're dead. And they would read about them sometimes in the papers. Sometimes they would never hear of anyone, of their friends that would just vanish. Pretty sad story, And kind of the culmination was when when their friend died, you know, and they had no apartment anymore to live in. So her boyfriend moves in with the guy who used to rent him for sex, moves in with him, you know, and a few times she visits, and on one visit, you know, they're both lying on a sofa in this guy's living room, and then the guy, the owner of the place, comes in and says, give him a nudge. And calls for the guy, wants to enjoy him, you know, wants to join him in his own room. And she says, please don't go, you know, please stay here with me, you know. And he says, don't worry, you know, he kind of flips out, you know. I mean, it's hard to say no to him, they need the money, and it's hard to offend the girl, you know. And anyways, he goes and he says, no, I just masturbated, you know. And then she's sitting here and hearing them doing it, you know, and she's like completely freaking out, you know. At one point, she opens the door and actually sees the full-on act, you know, and that's it, you know. She walks out, storms out, and now she's in a completely crushed situation. She has no friends, no parents, no support, no source of money, and she's addicted to this horrible thing called heroin, you know. She's hopeless. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been hopeless, but it's a hopeless situation. It's terrible. And then she runs into this 12-year-old friend of hers, you know, another girl, Betsy, and some solace there. And they continue about their heroin business, you know. And Betsy says, next day I'm getting off this thing, you know. Or I'm going to die, you know. And of course, next day she's walking down the street early in the morning hours, and she sees a paper, you know, daily newspaper, and she sees the title, you know, the youngest yet heroin victim of heroin in West Berlin, you know, and she's freaking out. Oh my God, I hope it's not my friend, you know. She rips the cover open, and it is her friend, you know. It is a friend, and that's it, you know. I've had enough, you know. She had 2 shots, you know, cooks them up, syringe. I'm going to kill myself in the nearest public restroom. And somewhere or other she survives, you know. Her mom takes her later on, takes her to the country side house, and somewhere or other she gets over this addiction, you know. She never found out what happened to her boyfriend, whether he's still alive, you know, what the heck happened to him. They were they were attracted to each other. They were important part of each other's life. And then somewhere or other, during these times, you have to understand what was going on, not only in Europe during these days, but also in America. There was this, there were two social phenomena going on. One was very liberal, that's the sexual revolution, the hippies, the wild youth. But their parents' generation, they were still very conservative people. Very conservative people, and the drug scene, although parents knew about it, it was a taboo. Don't talk about it. Don't put it in the papers. They just didn't want to hear about it. While hundreds of thousands of youth just in West Berlin were addicted to heroin and actually suffering tremendously. So these 2 news reporters wanted to publish all this, you know. They ran into this girl, now she was in her early 20s, and they interviewed her and eventually published this book. Now what's interesting about this book, first of all, the book was published not for the youth, it was published for the parents. So the parents opened their eyes. Books sold in millions. It was a bestseller all over the Europe. I read it in mid-80s. That's when I got hold of this book. And so for years this was a bestseller all over Europe. And who were the readers? Teenagers. Now, what do you think? What were teenagers thinking of this book?
It's for adults.
No, they thought, and especially after the movie was produced, because the book was so popular, they wanted to produce a movie, which they did, and movies also very depressing. I mean, very, it's very depressing. I mean,